Welcome to another episode of War Hero to Superhero, helping military veterans and first responders transform their lives from the bedroom to the boardroom. I am one of your hosts, Daniel Faust, and we have a fifth week in the month. Really weird, isn't it? We always get those every couple months, 52 weeks in a year. We have to put them somewhere. So October was that choice, not by me, but by the calendar. So how we leverage the fifth week is that we do a superhero sanctum. So you're in the sanctum. This is where I want it to be one day. So if you can help me afford this for you guys, the better. But our goal in the Superhero Sanctum is to bring wisdom to you, military veterans and first responders. We serve our country, we serve the United States, we serve our cities, and we want to equip you with the wisdom so you can go over not just survive, but to go over and thrive. And who I brought in today is Ann Meyer. She is the Live with Joy guru. Like, she's always not just super happy, she's joyous. She makes a conscious decision to go over and do that. And she wants to help you make that conscious decision too. So we're going to bring her in and she's going to bring on the wisdom. So, hey, Julie, do I have you?
Yep, I'm here.
Awesome. So why don't you tell my audience a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to go dive in on how do we get joy in our lives, because military veterans, first responders, I don't think we're joyous all the time.
No.
So
you're not really allowed to be. So as Daniel said, I'm Ann Meyer. I am a health and well-being coach by trade. But joy is my sweet spot, my everything. Everybody deserves it, no matter what's going on around them, especially when things are really tough. You totally deserve to have joy in your life. And it is possible, even if everything's falling down around you. And that's actually how Daniel and I met, was because of my work with joy. So hopefully I'll be able to be of service to you today.
Awesome. So you talk about joy, and that's your mantra, that's your brand, it's your countenance, it's your face. But again, us military veterans, first responders, sometimes they're not joyous because we go through a lot of stuff. We hit a lot of things. So first, how do you obtain joy? And actually, what's the difference? Because happy and joy, we kind of get that confused all the time unless we're watching cartoons, So could you tell us, how do we obtain joy and what's the difference?
Absolutely. Happiness tends to rely on what's going on around you and outside of you. And joy is actually, as you mentioned before, a very conscious decision, something that you choose. So, just like everybody else, I've gone through countless traumas and things, and I've seen a lot of things myself. So I understand where you guys are coming from in a limited way. But I know what I know. But the point is that you can actually, it's easier to have joy if you take really good care of yourself. It's easier to have joy if you look for certain things and you focus on certain things. So, something like if you don't sleep well enough, and that's going to happen a lot, especially if you're a first responder, you're not going to make as good of choices. But if you consciously decide to drink enough water, it's amazing how much more energy you can have. And the more energy you have, the better choices you make, the easier it is to see the good. So the problem is when we get into things like, okay, I'm not feeling well, I'm going to eat candy. I'm not feeling well, I'm going to, and I do that too, don't get me wrong. But if you can actually make slightly small little changes, it will make your life so much more joyful exponentially. And I'm not even talking crazy big changes. I'm just talking about little things that you can do no matter where you are, literally, in the world.
Yeah, so you were mentioning in that about self-care. So I've heard that a lot before. Maybe all of us heard before the 90s movement of self-improvement and whatnot. But what is actually self-care? Do I just go over and just get up in the morning and brush my teeth?
Actually, that is part of it. But the thing is that's missing from that definition is self-care, especially, people in the armed services, first responders. You're taught that you're last and you have to put everybody else before you. You cannot do that because you are just as important as everybody else. You have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. So it's not selfish to want things for yourself and take time for yourself. It's not selfish if you're married to have your alone time. It's not selfish, to spend 5 minutes on your own, or to not surround yourself with people that don't bring you happiness and joy when you don't have to. Because sometimes you can't change people, places, or things, but when you can and you have that option, you don't have to be around them. You don't owe anybody anything. So the most important thing about self-care, especially for the audience is that you matter. You are just as important, if not more so, because if it wasn't for you, the rest of us wouldn't be around. So the fact that you're taught to treat yourself as less than or last is completely a disservice to everyone, including yourself, especially yourself.
So we have to rewrite the script a little bit, sounds like.
Oh, no, it's okay. I saw some of the questions. We can keep going if you'd like.
No. I meant like in the sense of self-care. We have to rewrite the script a bit because we put ourselves as last. And now you're saying we have to rewrite the script and put ourselves as first or as a primary.
Absolutely. You know, it's the oxygen mask in the airplane. If you don't get the oxygen on yourself first, you can't help anybody else. And, you know, it is as simple as brushing your teeth. It is as simple as having eggs instead of Cocoa Puffs. You know, it is as simple as choosing water instead of soda. It is as simple as taking time out and watching a TV show instead of talking to your friend who's, you know, not exactly the most positive person in the world. You don't owe it to them just because you've been friends since you were 3.
Man, that is a lot of rewriting the script. It's small a little bit, but that's a bit. So as we think about self-care, you know, I'm a busy person, you're a busy person, our military veterans, first responders are busy people, sometimes working crazy shifts. Yes. Now, the tyranny of urgent happens. We just do it. How do I make it intentional to infuse joy into my day?
Well, first of all, you have to give yourself some grace because it doesn't come naturally and it's not going to be done perfectly. And I know that the instinct is follow the rules and do it right now, but there really aren't any rules because you have to make them up for you. And what looks like good health and taking care of myself for me is going to look different than it is for you. We're in different situations. So you really have to discover what it is that makes you happy. And that's the fun part because you don't have to choose what everybody else chooses. So to answer your question, how do you infuse it into your life? The quickest way to get it to become a habit, because once it's a habit, you don't have to think about it. Set alarms on your phone for little things. Like I have what's called a joy alarm, literally, and it goes off 5 times a day. I stop and I dance, and then I go back to whatever it is I'm doing. Not everybody that's going to resonate with, obviously, but maybe for you, and this isn't the most healthy choice, but maybe it's go out and have a cigarette. Yeah. Maybe it's, you know, just giving yourself a break and walking around the block. Maybe it's just to sit there and meditate or to pray for 5 minutes. You need to reset and just bring yourself back to the present moment because that's the easiest way for you to find joy. Something that works for me is when I wake up, I listen for the birds. If I can hear birds singing, I live in Southern California. It makes me happy. It's just, but that's what makes me happy. So there's little things, but the best way to do it is to not assume it'll take care of itself. It's something you have to actively choose. So like I said, set an alarm, just discover. That's the fun part is you get to discover what works and what doesn't. And don't be afraid to try anything new and different. Yeah, maybe we can combine cigarettes and dancing. I know that, right? Exactly. But I mean, whatever it is. And I, you know, honestly, for me, when I first started doing my own little practice of happiness and joy, that was silly. And it was way too much for me to handle. But you can't go from being straight-laced and to instantly silly. I mean, it doesn't work like that. It's like a car. You have to slam on the brakes and then pop it in reverse. You can't just automatically go in reverse. So, you know, just whatever works for you, small baby steps. So maybe that sounds really stupid to you, but maybe it's just to stop and think about something that you're grateful for, because that will instantly change the way that your brain connects and works so that you won't automatically go to the problems that you have to think about all day long. Yeah, I think about like neural ruts because I used to do a little bit about learning in the brain and whatnot, and it takes a while to now make a new rut. You can't just go over and just get out of it. You have to find something new to get into. So a positive neural rut compared to a negative one. And speaking of that, in that particular regard, it's just like a lot of our veterans have trauma, PTSD, different things and whatnot. And you mentioned to me over the chat, and I thought to expand on this. It's like, we know about the first trauma, we know about PTSD, but what is a secondary trauma? And we'll get more into like how to deal with that secondary trauma with joy, but what is a secondary trauma? Well, here's the thing. Anybody that is a veteran or a first responder, or anybody that's listening to this right now, I can guarantee has experienced secondary trauma. Secondary trauma is when your buddy tells you about seeing their friend's legs blown off. It's about, hearing all these things, or even let's say you work in a hospital and somebody comes in with a gunshot wound. That's secondary trauma. Anything that you see that you are told you're not supposed to have any feelings for. You're told that you're not supposed to have any reaction for because it wasn't happening directly to you. Well, you didn't get into the business of helping and serving people without having feelings. So, of course, you're going to take some of that on. And it actually has pretty much the same. There are a few little bit differences to, regular trauma. This got a lot of the same symptoms as PTSD as well. So, like I said, I can guarantee you that if you are in the armed services, armed forces, if you're a first responder, you have definitely experienced secondary trauma. Somebody's told you something. Somebody has told you about themselves. So you've seen something that you weren't necessarily there for, like I said, like a gunshot. But yeah, it's just, as I mentioned before, it's totally overlooked. You're just taught like, okay, that happened out there, but it didn't. People are sharing that with you. So that means whether you like it or not, you're picking up some of that energy. And so you really, sometimes like for me, it shows up in that I just I'm in a bad mood for no reason. And then I remember, oh yeah, I just heard about so-and-so and this, and I realize, okay, that's not my stuff, but I'm feeling it. And so people don't understand that not only are you dealing with your own things, but you're dealing with everyone around you who is, that you're helping and that you're around, because, people on the outside world, they don't understand what you're going through. You can't talk to them about things. They don't have any clue what it's like. So how will they understand who you are and what you're doing and what you're about? So you tend to talk to each other. And the problem is then they're, like I said, secondary trauma. So people, it's totally... I didn't know about it for years. And then I started working in an industry where I was helping others, and I couldn't figure out what was going on with me. And then I learned about that, and I thought, oh, I wish more people knew that it was okay to have feelings about somebody else's things. And it doesn't make you weak. It's just, it's okay, because you'd be inhuman if you didn't. But how do you deal with it?
Yeah, I remember when I worked in mental health in the military, and it was like, had a person that was suicidal, 8 out of 10, in the middle of triaging them, got the knife off them, and they're like, let's go to commander's call, woo! And then like, they take me out and they take me to commander's call. And I remember specifically saying, I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like in the commander's call to the guy next to me, he's in the same shop. He's like, what do you mean? I said, triaging a guy that's suicidal. You pull me on commander's call, and now I'm supposed to be happy and excited, like, yeah. And he's like, I said, how do you deal? And he's like, I just do. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's
not helpful.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of response that makes it feel not safe to be able to share with other people either. So I can understand how that would be difficult.
Yeah, I'm a weird guy. I'm gonna keep working through it. I'm like, not going to you, kind of someone else. And that's my heart and my passion, is to go over and go through healing and going through release. But let's say we don't have that person to go over and work through, like what tactics can we do to stay in that joy, especially if we're rolling into that secondary trauma, like, hey, we weren't on the Humvee, but our friends shared it with us afterwards, and we're trying to love on them, but how do we stay in the joy if we're in this quote unquote secondary trauma?
Okay, so first of all, you need to, this is the thing, and this is going to be the hardest part, is you need to know what you can handle. And the thing is sometimes you're not the person that they can talk to, because you need you time and you need to kind of be in the right headspace. You can't help somebody if you're in the same headspace as them, because, you're in the same sort of like level of problem. So that's one thing, is to say, if you like, there's times I said, you know what, I'm sorry, can we talk in 10 minutes? And I'll take 10 minutes. I'll take that time to think about the things that I'm grateful for. As I mentioned before, I will pray. I will meditate. I will just practice my breathing. And I know that that sounds really simple, and it is, but it actually works. And people, think about when you're scared, you hold your breath. When you're anxious, you hold your breath. When you're mad, you hold your breath. All of these things. So when you go to sleep, you breathe nice and slow and deep. So think about that. So you can actually change your body physically, like to change your emotions. So if you change your breathing habits or change the way you're breathing in that moment, you can actually change your brain chemistry. So then you are more present and you're back to center. It's easier to just relax. And when I say joy, I don't mean like Pollyanna. I don't mean there's butterflies and rainbows everywhere. I mean that you can still see good, no matter what, you can still find that little gem of something. So maybe you don't necessarily want to hear what your friend has to say, but at least the gem in that is that they trust you enough to come to you. That's something to be happy about. That's something that would bring me joy. So that's just little things. But the big one, I would say, or even move your body too. That's a really good one. Jumping jacks, whatever. I'll do wall sits, those things that it really actually changes the chemistry in your brain. So those are really, really, really quick ways. And then another one is maintenance. You got to just maintenance. So one of the biggest things is water. People don't understand the importance of water. If you think about it, you're mostly made up of water. And if you're not drinking enough, you're dehydrated. If you're dehydrated, then you tend to make decisions on the same level as a drunk person. So, So people don't realize Yeah, and it doesn't take long to get dehydrated. So those are things that you really definitely, they're easy fixes, but breath and movement are the two fastest ways to change your chemistry to bring you back into a happier state of mind.
So people start making dumb decisions, just pass them a bottle of water.
Awesome. It will actually help. Blame it on the water.
Kind of stupid. You need some water. Or you'd be like, you don't try to do a cute story. You'd be like, I don't know if that sounds right. Maybe you should hydrate and come back in 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. It's like those Snickers commercials, only with water.
I thought about that, and I don't mean to bring up yesterday on the news, but maybe we should have gave some water.
I know, right? That's made a difference.
Yeah, they didn't have no water tonight. You think about it. The moderator didn't have water. The two on stage didn't have water. That's like a key factor. I'm like, unless you're doing a TED Talk, which is like 18 minutes, get your water out.
I love it. That's the other thing too is, pick something that makes you happy. Sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes whatever it is about me isn't enough to get me out of my funk. Like I'm not reason enough in my own mind. So I think about my family. I'm like, okay, I can do this for them. Whatever it is, I can do it for them until I can bring myself up to a place where I matter again in my own mind. Just pick something that you can think of, or even a mantra. People talk about mantras or, quotes. You were on the show that I just did. Thank you again. And there was a speaker that we had. His name's Chris Salem, and one of his things, and I use this as my mantra now, just in everyday life, and it was to give without restriction and receive without resistance. And every time I start to get kind of in my head, I think about that. And I know it sounds really simple, and it is, but it's actually hard to do, especially if you're a woman and someone says, hey, your hair looks great tonight. Oh, well, I didn't do it. Or, there's always, that's receiving with resistance. So you can't keep that energy going and moving and all that. So, yeah. So if you pick something for you that gets you out of that funk, you got to plan it ahead of time. You're not going to think of it in the moment. That's the thing. You're not going to think of it in the moment.
Yeah. I've been recently thinking about the word dissemble, Dissemble. Diane Curry, give her credit while whispering, because she's the one that gave me the thought. So we're working together in some collaboration things. But yeah, I realize we as Americans, and especially as military veterans, first responders, not all, but in a general sense, what I've seen is that we dissemble. We criticize, we minimize. Somebody gives us a compliment, we kind of strip it away. And it's like, if we continue to do that, we can't stay in the joy, because we're stripping the joy away. We're like, joy's like, no, and you're like, I'm going to take it off and rip it off. So yeah, it's what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And, I challenge everyone to own their awesome, because the choices that you've made to help other people and be there for other people is so unselfish. And because of that, you tend to think of taking care of yourself as selfish, but it isn't. It's maintenance. Like, you're going to, oil change for your car. You need to do things for yourself. But, the compliments, and this is what helped me with that in particular, was it's as much for the person giving it as it is for the person receiving it. So if you can think about, if you just said thank you, then you're doing something for the person saying it to you, if you want to be of service. I just play mind tricks with myself so I can get back to that better frame of mind quickly.
Cool. That's really good wisdom. Speaking of that, and I'm going to go a little deeper because this one's a little heavier, but I dealt with this so much. Our military veterans, first responders, have seen a lot. I remember I wasn't even a first responder, but I was first responding on the scene when this motorcycle got hit from a truck, and I had to respond because me and my wife and 2 kids are only there. And I was like, wow, this is when my heart changed to first responders too. I'm like, they are like the military people, but in the frag every single day. Like, everywhere they go, they're like, it's gonna be chaos. So let's say that happens or whatever it is, and they're processing it. How do they process that situation and stay in joy? Because there's a lot of, explicit words people think of in that regard. But how would they process that to stay in the joy so it doesn't turn into maybe PTSD or depression, anxiety, or unfortunately suicide?
That is actually a really wonderful question. And, part of being a first responder is sort of turning off your thoughts and your feelings so that you can make it through and be there for that moment. Because if you get caught up in the drama of what's going on around you and you can't respond, you literally cannot respond. So you kind of have to turn that all off. But the point is you do have to honor your thoughts and your feelings. It might look different for certain people. When I was helping people with addiction, the stories and the things that I heard were just mind blowing. And granted, that was secondary trauma, but I had a therapist that I talked to. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. There's nothing wrong with going to someone and saying, hey, this is what I saw. But the thing is with that, because if you don't honor those thoughts and those feelings, it does turn into PTSD. It does turn into something that it can actually turn into physical disease in your body as well. So some things that I do, let's say I can't talk to someone about it, or it's not appropriate for me to talk to someone, I journal it out. I get it out of me onto paper just because I can't have that in me. And then that helps. It helps get it through my body. But I put a time limit on my feelings. So whether or not, no matter what it is. So let's say I witnessed a car accident, or, I was trying to help with a car accident. I would honor those feelings for a while, as long as I felt them, but I put a time limit on it. It depends on how long it takes you to process something. For me, I can now at this point in my life be like, okay, this is going to be a day that I just sit in this, and it is what it is. Some stuff, it's like, okay, 15 minutes, and then I'm back. It just depends on what works for you, but you've got to show yourself some grace. You are allowed to have those feelings. You would not be human. You wouldn't be able to do what you do if you didn't have them. So it's kind of like one of those weird things where if you didn't have them, you wouldn't do it. But because you do have them, you're not supposed to have them. It's like not acceptable to be upset about seeing what you saw because it's part of your job. But who cares? It's still human. It's still life. It's still what you care about, what you're trying to protect, what you're trying to help and save. So, those are things that you have to do. But the other thing, too, is you can't forget to have fun. And one of the biggest things that you have to do because it's easy to get in a mood, it's especially when they keep coming at you, one after the other. And it's like, come on now, can I get a break?
Yeah.
You have to do what it's called opposite action. So if I feel like going to bed and I know that I'm not actually tired, I will go out for a run instead. If I, and I, I try and stick to my routine instead of giving myself an out like, okay, well, you know what? I had a really tough day, so I don't need to go work out. But working out actually changes your chemistry as well, as you know. So you can actually work through those negative feelings and, as they say, sweat them out, whatever that looks like for you. It doesn't even have to be something serious. Maybe just even going for a walk in nature can help. But you've got to find a way to ground yourself into the moment and remember everything that you do have in your life and everything that is positive in those moments, because sometimes they last long, and it takes a while to get out of it. But there's nothing wrong with you if you're upset. That means you're capable of feeling joy too, because you're feeling upset. So that's the beauty part. It's not opposite. You can feel two things at the same time. People think that it's one or the other. And I think that that's where happiness comes in. Happiness is opposite to, unhappiness. But joy you can have even if you're sad. Because I've lost countless people. And there's still ways to find and appreciate and smile, and just, it's, grief is hard. Grief is really hard. That's the other thing too, is you got to work through your grief. You can't just pretend it's not there. And it looks different for other people.
It does. And that's some amazing wisdom that you brought. So we're going to finalize with some wisdom bombs. I can't coin that yet. I got to find out that I can use that. But 3 superhero tactics that you can go over and bring to our audience, or maybe someone that you dealt with in the past that you just, if you only had 5 minutes and you're like, all right, I might never see you again. And you're like, here's 3 things that you can just take with you.
I would say, oh man, that's a tough one. I would say to remember that you matter and remember why you're doing what you're doing. So my superhero tactics are to remember what brings you joy, why you got into it in the first place. In those moments when you feel like leaving, remember why you started in the first place. On the best days, remember those people that came back and thanked you. Remember those people that said, God bless you for doing this. Thank you. Remember those moments. Another thing, like I said, is movement. If I'm in a mood, and that's the last thing I want to do is move around. I want to scrunch up into this like tight little ball. No. Jumping jacks, burpees, wall sits, whatever. Like I said, just 5 minutes of that. And the last thing is always gratitude. Always gratitude. Because I can sit there and think about all those good things in my life. And if I start thinking about that, those feelings expand. Instead of going down that negative spiral, you can pop it in reverse and go up to the happy place again, the joy.
There you go. That's really cool. So looks like we can find you in a couple places on Facebook and IG. And if people want to learn more about the Live with Joy Summit, is that something that they can just go on asynchronously? Is that something that's evergreen?
It's actually on my YouTube channel right now, but if you reach out through livewithjoysummit.com, we can send you stuff. And we don't sell anything. It's just all about helping people. So that's cool. We can get you some of those interviews as well.
That's pretty sweet. So I want to thank you, Julie, for going over and joining us, and all the people watching on Facebook, YouTube, Easy Way Network, Roku. We're in 7 locations and growing, which is fantastic. And we want you to watch all 28 minutes and 37 seconds and counting of the episode, but to take Julie to the next level on our digital TV platform through the Easy Way, distributing through 15 platforms and more, all you have to do is give her 3 seconds of time. 3 seconds of time goes over and hits a view. If she hits the most views in 72 hours, then she's going to be uplifted. And she only has 2 other competitors. So we have an interview Thursday, we have an interview Friday. So the competition's fierce by a view. So we prefer you to watch the whole interview, but if